No, you don't get to talk right now, I said firmly. You've had your moment. Now it's my turn. The crowd was leaning in now, their attention locked on me. Even the phones had dropped slightly, as if they didn't want to miss a single word. You see this trash? I gestured to the mess she'd made. This is exactly what you are. A mess, not because of what you've spilled here, but because of what you carry inside. All that hate, all that entitlement, it's not just ugly, it's sad. You think stepping on someone else makes you taller, but it doesn't. It just makes you smaller. The murmurs in the crowd grew louder. I could see people nodding, exchanging glances. Even Rebecca's friend was inching away from her, looking embarrassed to be part of this spectacle. Rebecca finally found her voice, but it was shaky. You don't know anything about me, she snapped. You're just some what? I interrupted, my voice rising just enough to cut her off. Some guy who works hard? Some guy who treats people with respect even when they don't deserve it? Yeah, that's me. And you? You're the one who doesn't belong here, not because of where you're from, but because of what you've become. The crowd erupted into applause. It wasn't loud at first, just a smattering of claps, but it grew quickly. People started cheering, shouting things like, "That's right," and "You tell her." Rebecca's face turned red, bright, blotchy red. She looked around, realizing for the first time that the crowd wasn't on her side. "You think you're so smart," she hissed, her voice trembling with anger. "This isn't over." "You're right," I said, stepping closer, my voice low enough that only she could hear. "It's not over. Because every person here is going to remember this moment. Every time they see you, they'll think about today. And that's not my mess to clean up, that's yours." Rebecca turned on her heel and stormed off, her heels clicking against the pavement like the final notes of a bad symphony. Her friend scurried after her, clutching her little dog as if it could shield her from the weight of the moment. I stood there for a moment, letting the applause wash over me. But it wasn't about the crowd. It wasn't about winning or losing. It was about finally standing up for myself, for every person who's ever been knocked down by someone like Rebecca. And for once, I felt free as I bent down to start cleaning up the mess because, let's face it, someone still had to. I heard someone in the crowd say, "Man, that guy's a legend." I smiled to myself, shook my head, and got back to work. Because at the end of the day, that's who I am, and I wouldn't trade it for anything. What would you have done in James's shoes? Have you ever faced something similar or seen someone close to you go through a situation like this? Share your thoughts, drop a comment, and let's start a conversation. Don't forget to like if this story resonated with you. Every interaction helps spread awareness. This story was created to shine a light on real issues and to inspire positive change in the world. Your opinion matters, and together we can make a difference. Let's make the world a better place, one story at a time. Let me tell you, sitting in that rusty cage was not how I envisioned spending my day. The air inside was stale, the kind that sticks to your skin and makes you feel like you're suffocating. I clutched my belly, trying to focus on steadying my breathing, while those two clowns played out their twisted little game just a few feet away. The greasy-haired guy, who I'd started calling Smirk, pulled out his phone and started snapping pictures. "Smile for the camera," he said with a chuckle, like he was hosting some kind of demented photo shoot. I didn't give him the satisfaction. Instead, I stared straight at him, my lips pressed together in a line so tight it could cut glass. If looks could kill, he'd be toast, but unfortunately, my glare wasn't about to break through those bars. The bigger guy, Guts, because let's be real, that uniform was doing zero favors for his stomach, leaned against the cage, chewing on something. Maybe gum, maybe a piece of his own sense of decency. It was hard to tell. "You're a quiet one, huh?" he said, his voice slow and mocking. "Most people would be begging by now." I didn't answer. I wasn't going to give them that satisfaction either. "Oh, come on," Smirk said, lowering his phone for a moment. "You're no fun. At least give us a little scream or something. It's all part of the experience." The experience? What kind of twisted theme park did these guys think they were running? My mind was racing, trying to piece together a way out of this mess. My hands tightened on the bars, testing them for any weakness. They were solid, too solid for me to budge. I glanced around the warehouse, searching for anything I could use. A loose bolt, a discarded tool, a miracle, literally anything. Meanwhile, Smirk and Guts were laughing it up like they were on some reality show. Smirk kept fiddling with his phone, probably live streaming this nonsense to some equally awful audience. Guts, on the other hand, seemed more interested in getting under my skin. "You know," Guts said, his tone casual, "we could have picked anyone, but there's something about you. You just have that vibe, you know? Like someone who needs a lesson." I tilted my head, giving him the iciest stare I could muster. "A lesson? You mean like how not to trust strangers pretending to be cops? Got it. Thanks for the tip." That caught him off guard. His grin faltered for a second before he laughed again, louder this time. "Oh, you've got a mouth on you. I like that." Smirk joined in, waving his phone in the air like he'd just caught a prize fish. "Hey, maybe we make this interactive. Get some feedback on what we should do next." Interactive? Oh no, that was not happening. I needed to think fast. My eyes darted back to Smirk's phone. That little device could be my ticket out of here, if I could just get my hands on it. But how? They were both too far away, and even if I did grab it, there was still the issue of the cage. "Hey, genius," I said, nodding towards Smirk. "You sure you're getting my good side? I mean, if this is your big moment, you might want to work on your angles." Smirk narrowed his eyes, the grin slipping off his face for the first time. "What's that supposed to mean?" I shrugged, trying to look as bored as possible. "Just saying, you're not exactly Spielberg over there. You might want to step up your game." It was a gamble, but it worked. Smirk walked closer to the cage, holding up his phone like he was trying to prove a point. "Oh yeah? How about this angle? Looks pretty good to me." Closer, just a little closer. I glanced at Guts, who was watching with mild amusement, but didn't seem too worried. Perfect. If I could just get Smirk to come a little nearer, maybe distract him enough to— "Whoa, hold up!" Guts said suddenly, straightening up. He sniffed the air, his expression twisting into confusion. "Do you smell that?" Smirk frowned, lowering his phone. "Smell what?" Guts tilted his head, sniffing again. "Burning! Like electrical or something." I froze, my heart racing. Could it be a short circuit, a wiring issue, or was it just my imagination? Smirk turned toward the far corner of the warehouse, his attention momentarily off me. "You're imagining things, man. There's nothing—" And then it happened. A sharp crackle, followed by a flicker of the lights overhead. It wasn't much, but it was enough to send a ripple of tension through the room. Guts straightened up completely, his bravado replaced by a flicker of uncertainty. "What was that?" he asked, his voice lower now. "Relax," Smirk said, though he didn't sound so confident anymore. "It's probably just old wiring. This place is falling apart." The lights flickered again, longer this time. The hum of the fluorescent bulbs wavered, casting the room into brief, shadowy darkness. My mind raced even faster. Maybe this was my chance, if I could somehow use the distraction. But before I could make a move, the light steadied, and Smirk turned back to me, his grin returning like it had never left. "Nice try," he said, pointing a finger at me like I'd orchestrated the whole thing. "But you're not going anywhere." I clenched my fists, frustration boiling inside me. The game was far from over, but one thing was clear. I couldn't rely on luck. If I was going to get out of here, I'd have to outsmart these two, and time was running out. Let me tell you, the flickering lights and crackling sounds might have unsettled Smirk and Guts, but for me, that was a lifeline. Every little distraction brought me closer to figuring out how to turn this circus around. They thought they had all the control, but let's be honest. Guys like them always underestimate people like me. As the light steadied again, Smirk leaned against the cage with that ever-present smug grin, like he was daring me to do something. Guts, however, was still on edge, glancing around the room like the shadows might suddenly come to life. "Not so tough now, huh?" "You're awfully quiet." Smirk said, tapping his phone against the bars. Planning something, or are you just finally realizing how out of options you are? I rolled my eyes, trying to look unimpressed. Oh, totally, I said, sarcasm dripping from my voice. I'm just sitting here, reflecting on how lucky I am to be part of your little horror movie audition. You guys must be so proud. Smirk chuckled, clearly enjoying himself. You know, I like you, he said, pointing at me. You've got spirit. Too bad that doesn't count for much when you're behind bars. Meanwhile, Guts wandered off toward the corner of the warehouse, mumbling something about checking the fuse box. His absence was the opening I needed, but I had to act fast. Smirk was still too close, and I needed him distracted long enough to make my move. Hey, I said, leaning forward and forcing my voice to sound casual. Why don't you tell me something? What's the end game here? I mean, you've gone to all this trouble. What's the point? Smirk tilted his head, clearly loving the attention. The point? The point is, sometimes you just gotta teach people a lesson. Put them in their place, you know? I raised an eyebrow. So this is what you do for fun? Seems kinda sad, if you ask me. His smirk faltered for just a second, and that was all the confirmation I needed. Guys like him thrive on power trips, but poke a hole in their ego, and they start to wobble. You've got a lot of nerve, he said, his tone sharper now. Maybe you should spend less time talking and more time thinking about how you got here. Oh, I've thought about it, I shot back. And you know what? The only thing I can figure is that you two are just bored. Or maybe you're compensating for something? Smirk's face darkened and he leaned closer to the cage. Perfect. I kept my expression calm, but inside my heart was pounding. If he came just a little closer. Before I could make my move, Guts called out from across the room. Yo, something's off with the wiring. We might want to wrap this up before the whole place goes dark. Smirk hesitated, glancing toward his partner. Relax, he said, though his voice lacked its usual confidence. It's fine, just a little glitch. Guts didn't look convinced, but he shrugged and started walking back toward us. Time was running out, and I needed to act now. As Smirk turned to say something to Guts, I reached through the bars, grabbing at the phone still clutched in his hand. He yelped, stumbling back in surprise as the device slipped from his grip and clattered to the floor just out of my reach. You little... he started, but I didn't give him a chance to finish. I lunged forward, stretching my arm through the bars as far as it would go. My fingers grazed the edge of the phone, and with one last desperate push, I managed to pull it toward me. Hey! Smirk shouted, recovering from his shock. He lunged for the phone, but I snatched it up and held it tight. My heart was racing, but I couldn't let them see any fear. Looks like I've got the upper hand now, I said, lifting the phone just out of his reach. Guts reached us then, his face a mix of confusion and anger. What's going on? He demanded. She's got my phone, Smirk barked, his face red with frustration. Get it back! Guts reached for the keys on his belt, but before he could do anything, the lights flickered again, plunging the warehouse into brief, total darkness. For a split second, the only sound was the buzz of the failing lights and the pounding of my heartbeat. When the lights came back on, Guts looked rattled, and Smirk was pacing like a caged animal. Enough of this, Smirk growled. We're ending this now. But before they could make a move, I pressed the emergency dial on the phone. The ringing sound cut through the air, freezing both of them in their tracks. You're bluffing, Smirk said, though his voice wavered. Try me, I said, my tone steady. I don't know who'll pick up first, real cops or someone else, but either way, you're done. The room was dead silent for a moment, the tension thick enough to cut with a knife. Smirk and Guts exchanged a panicked glance, their earlier bravado crumbling. It was clear they hadn't expected this turn of events. Fine, Smirk said finally, his voice low and furious. You win, but don't think this is over. I held his gaze, refusing to back down. Oh, it's over, I said, and the only place you two are going is straight to jail. What would you have done in this situation? Do you think you would have handled it differently? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Have you or anyone you know ever experienced something like this? Don't forget to like and share if this story resonated with you. This story was created to shed light on serious issues and spark conversations that can lead to positive change. Your voice matters, and together we can work toward a better world. Let's stand against injustice and make a difference, because your opinion truly matters.